Now, when you're plasterboarding a wall in a domestic property, so in someone's house, it's always a good idea to buy 6 foot by 3 foot boards in the old money, but basically they're the smaller balls as opposed to the 8 foot by 4 foot. If you try and get an 8 foot by 4 foot board up a stairwell in a domestic house, apart from knocking the corners off it and probably snapping it, you've got a good chance of damaging the decor in the customer's house. So take my word for it, 6 foot by 3 foot plasterboards for doing your plastering job. Now, you also notice that when you do a wall like this, you stagger the joints like you would with a brick wall, because if you did the boards straight and all the joints were in straight lines, you've got much more chance of cracking occurring. This breaking up the joint, then you've only got one continuous joint going in one direction, not in 2 directions. So by breaking this joint up, much less chance of cracking. When it comes to covering the joints, fiberglass tape. There's white tape and there's an orange one. The orange one is just more sticky, so if you put it up the day before, there's less chance of when you come in the next morning that it's fallen off. Okay, easy to stick. Back in the day, you'd have to put plaster on the wall, on the joints first, and we used to use Hessian scrim, which is basically like sacking. You have to stick that into the plaster, so you put the plaster on the joints, and you put this sacking skin, jute skin, onto the joints, put a bit more plaster over the top, and that was your first bit of plastering you did. Then you come back, knock up a big mix, and hit the whole wall. With this stuff, that's been around for years now, you literally just pull a bit off, stick it on the joint. I basically just cut mine off with the edge of a scraper. Again, with this stuff, don't overlap it unless you're in a situation where you have to. If you're going up against a plasterboard ceiling, which we're not in this case, you could also put some of this scrim in the actual corner itself, so it butts between the wall plasterboard and the plasterboard on the ceiling to help cover that and stop cracking up where the ceiling meets the wall. Okay, so we've got our tape on, so we hit finish. Now, when you're first starting out doing something like this, you only really need to put a small amount on your trowel. Initially, people tend to do this when they're learning. We'll go back to the first video, which is all about how to mix up plaster for practicing, which is a lime mortar plaster, which stays wet all day. You can use it all day, and you can basically you can grind it up and use it again, or if you put it on a wall, it's easy to smash off the wall once it's dry, so you can use that same wall again for practicing. But anyway, back to this. The technique you'll practice when you've got the practice plaster mixed up is to take the head off of the plaster, so you're cutting it off that way. And of course, if you did that flat, you would just knock it off the end of the board. But as it's going in that direction, you tilt the board up, so you're lifting it really up into the air. If the plaster's thick enough, it's got to stay on the board anyway. Okay. Without further ado, let's get this on. If you're right-handed, you do tend to start at the left-hand side of the wall. If you're left-handed, the opposite side. But when it comes to finish, whether you start with the top or the bottom of a wall is really a matter of preference. You will be cutting it up so quickly as you get better that it doesn't really matter how you get it on. The idea is not to play with the plaster. The idea is to get it on the wall. Because it's better to be going off on the wall than it is going off in your bucket. If you do try the downward sweep, first time you do that you'll probably knock a ton of it back onto the floor. So initially just put it on by going upwards. Something I learned years ago, if you're right-handed, never borrow a left-handed plasterer's trowel. Because as you go to put it on the wall, or to smooth the wall out, the way it's been worn in will just dig huge grooves in your finish. But the chances of you borrowing a left-handed person's trowel if you're right-handed is pretty slim. Now, back in the day, you wouldn't have a speed skim. You'd have something similar, a derby. This is a metal rule, basically with two handles on it, or just literally a piece of steel, which we're ruling out with. Now, if the background's not too porous, when you put a finish on, then by all means use one of these to level it out once you get the hang of it. If it's drying too fast, then you're just going to rip it off or make a mess. And you don't want to start pouring water on it at too early a stage because it'll blister up. On a plasterboard wall, you're not going to have too many problems. Anywhere that it does leave hollows, you just put a small amount over the top of those hollows. Skim back over. Let's get your wall nice and flat so when it comes to troweling up, you get a lovely finish. There. probably can't see it on the video, but the corners of this, though they're slightly rounded, are giving me a line in the plaster, which isn't a big deal. It can be taken out with a trowel as it dries, but if you cut these more round, which you can on the plastic one, give it a bit of a sand, then when you do that, you've got much less chance when you're rolling off of getting these lines that come from the edge, top and bottom edge of the float of the speed skim in this instance. Now if you look at this closely, this is a closer angle now, you can see the lines I'm talking about. But generally over the wall as a whole. At this stage it's quite a nice job. From here, you'd either mix up with a little bit of water, the stuff you've got left, to apply a second coat over the top of this one when it's picked up a little bit. By doing that, it'll all dry at the same time. Some plasterers mix up a completely fresh, small amount, and then go back over their wall with a second coat for that. Or it can be, as it is in this situation, thick enough where you could leave this and then trowel it up, but that purely depends on how much finish you've got in there, and again it's a preference. At the end of the day, once it's done, if it's nice and flat and it's nice and smooth, in my opinion, then it doesn't really matter. Another important thing, wash this while it's still wet. So if you let this dry and you start scraping it off, you'll start taking little chips and chunks and slivers out of the edge of the blade, which when you're going on the wall, mess it up bad. So while it's still wet, give it a good wash in the bucket with a brush. Actually, when it comes to how many coats you put on the wall, if you go back in the day, I was taught put the first coat on, which is finish, with a steel float, steel trowel. Then put your second coat on with a hard plastic trowel. It's got no give in it whatsoever. Put that on, leave that for a while. You'd then put a third coat on using the plastic float, and then you would leave it. You could obviously try rolling it off to get it a bit flatter, but you put the 3 coats on. Then, when it was picked up enough that it was fairly dry to the touch, you'd wet the wall, rub it up with a hard plastic float all over, rub it up, typically over the whole thing. It looks a scratchy mess, but it helps to fill any of the voids. Then, finally, with the fat that you get off of it, with a steel float, steel trowel, you take that up and off and go over it with that fat, taking out any discrepancies. So at the end of that, the wall was nice, flat and smooth. It might look a bit rough in texture, but you couldn't feel it. It's just where it had been rubbed up with a float. But that was 3 coats. So that was by the book. But if you went on the building site and you spent that amount of time putting that many coats of plaster on the wall, you wouldn't have lasted one day. So, hey. But generally it's 2 coats, but you can, in a lot of instances, get away with 1. Okay guys, at this point it's fairly dry to touch. Next one, I like to use the Ultraflex trail on there. In this instance it's the ox. We'll wet the ball down with a spray and give it its first trail up with this. Trailing up in the water, that's when I tend to start at the top then, and trail down. Generally let's keep an angle on your trail, dead straight like that. A lot of chance of it dragging, always at an angle. Always at an angle when you're trailing. Never keep it dead straight because you've got more chance, unless it's been bone dry, you've got more chance of dragging it all the way. Some kind of mess with it. Pretty good pressure on it as you go. The pressure should be more from the bottom of your hand pushing the trail than the front. So more of the heel. That's where you're putting the pressure. The back should push it up. Too dry, put a little bit of water on it. If you did this too soon, you put the water on it and trailed it up, especially with an ordinary Marshalltown steel trail, then you can start to get blisters in the plaster. Once you've got the blisters in the plaster, the only time you can trail those out is when it's practically gone right hard, and you don't really want to be doing that. Once you've got the bulk of this done, again you can go around the edges, making sure you've got them nice and neat. You can more or less then let this set hard and then give it a hard trowel just to finish it off. Gives it that nice kind of sheen. Doesn't really affect the decorating, but if it's an issue for a decorator, he'll soon rub a little bit of sandpaper over it just to roughen it up, but you shouldn't have to do that. So you get quite a lot of fat off of that. Well, that's what we call the stuff you're taking off. Once it's wet, it can be used to fill in the other hollows or marks that are around the edges or in the middle. So this can be given a hard trowel up once you've tidied up. And then we're done. You could give it a hard trowel up once you tidy it up, just before you leave. The very happy customer.